Relationships can feel like a minefield. One wrong step, and everything explodes. Why is it that even with the best intentions, we so often find ourselves stuck in cycles of misunderstanding, frustration, and conflict? What if the key to transforming these struggles lies not in changing others, but in shifting how we see and respond to the world around us? This is where Stoicism, a philosophy that has stood the test of time, offers profound wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. At its core, Stoicism teaches us that self-awareness is the foundation of every meaningful connection. In this video, we'll explore 40 Stoic lessons, each one a practical tool to help you navigate the complexities of relationships with clarity, compassion, and resilience. Whether it's dealing with difficult people, fostering deeper intimacy, or simply learning to communicate more effectively, these timeless principles will guide you towards stronger, healthier connections. Along the way, we'll dive into insights from Stoic thinkers like Epictetus and Seneca, and you'll discover how their teachings can be applied to modern-day challenges. But this isn't just about theory, it's about action. As we go through each lesson, take a moment to reflect on your own relational dynamics. Where do you struggle the most? What patterns keep repeating themselves? By the end of this video, you'll walk away with not just knowledge, but a roadmap to transform your relationships from the inside out. So let's begin this journey together. How many times have you found yourself in a disagreement, frustrated because the other person just won't see things your way? Maybe it's a partner who doesn't share your priorities, a friend who makes choices you don't agree with, or even a coworker who seems to do things in a way that drives you up the wall. It's natural to want to influence others, to try to steer the ship in the direction you think it should go. But here's the hard truth: you can't control what other people do. You can't force someone to change their behavior, their opinions, or their feelings, and trying to do so, that's where relationships often start to break down. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it simply: some things are within our power while others are not. What he's saying is that the only thing you truly have control over is yourself, your actions, your reactions, your choices. Everything else, that's outside your sphere of influence. When you try to control what's not yours to control, you're setting yourself up for frustration, conflict, and disappointment. But when you focus on what you can control, your own mindset, your responses, your boundaries, you create space for healthier, more harmonious relationships. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're in a situation where someone close to you keeps making decisions that you think are unwise. Maybe it's a family member who's spending recklessly, or a friend who's staying in a toxic relationship. Your instinct might be to step in, to convince them to change their course. But here's the Stoic approach: instead of trying to control their choices, focus on how you respond. You can offer advice if they ask for it, but ultimately their decisions are theirs to make. By letting go of the need to control the outcome, you free yourself from unnecessary stress and conflict. You also show respect for their autonomy, which can actually strengthen your connection in the long run. Now, take a moment to reflect. Is there a relationship in your life where you've been trying to control the outcome? Maybe it's a situation where you've been pushing someone to change, or perhaps you've been holding onto resentment because things haven't gone the way you wanted. What would it look like if you shifted your focus to what you can control? Your own actions, your own mindset. Sometimes the most powerful change starts with letting go. And when you do, you might just find that the relationship begins to transform, not because the other person changed, but because you did. Have you ever regretted reacting in anger or frustration, only to realize later that your emotions clouded your judgment? This is where Stoic wisdom offers a powerful tool: cognitive detachment. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about stepping back and seeing emotions for what they truly are: judgments we've attached to events, not the events themselves. As Seneca once said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Emotions, in the Stoic view, are like weather patterns. They come and go, but they don't define the sky. The key is to observe them without letting them dictate your actions. Imagine this: someone says something that feels hurtful or offensive. Your first instinct might be to lash out or defend yourself. But what if, instead of reacting immediately, you paused? That moment of pause creates space, a mental gap where you can reassess the situation. Was the comment truly malicious, or could it have been a misunderstanding? By detaching from the initial emotional surge, you gain clarity and the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This simple practice can prevent countless misunderstandings and preserve relationships. Think about a recent moment when you reacted emotionally. Maybe it was a heated argument or a situation where you felt slighted. Looking back, could you have approached it differently if you'd taken a step back? The beauty of cognitive detachment is that it's a skill you can develop over time. The more you practice pausing and observing your emotions without letting them control you, the more you'll find yourself navigating life's challenges with calm and clarity. It's not about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming emotionally intelligent. And that, in itself, is a transformative step toward healthier, more meaningful relationships. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most renowned Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, often reflected on the importance of understanding others. In his writings, he reminded himself to consider the perspectives of those he disagreed with, even his enemies. He wrote, "When someone does you wrong, ask yourself, what good or harm did they think would come of it?" This simple yet profound question challenges us to step outside our own assumptions and see the world through another's eyes. It's not about excusing harmful behavior, but about understanding the motives behind actions, which can help us respond with clarity rather than react with anger. Empathy, as Stoicism teaches, isn't about abandoning our principles or tolerating mistreatment. It's about cultivating a deeper awareness of the human experience. Epictetus, another Stoic thinker, put it this way: when you see someone acting in a way you find difficult, remind yourself that their actions are guided by their own beliefs and perceptions, not yours. This perspective doesn't just soften our judgment, it empowers us to approach conflicts with a calmer, more constructive mindset. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're in a heated argument with a friend or colleague. Emotions are running high, and it feels like neither of you can see eye to eye. Instead of focusing on your own frustration, try this. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what might they be feeling right now? What experiences or fears could be driving their reaction? This act of perspective-taking doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it can help you communicate in a way that de-escalates tension and opens the door to resolution. Now think about a recent disagreement you've had. How might the other person have been feeling? What pressures or worries could have influenced their behavior? By reflecting on this, you're not just practicing empathy, you're also building the kind of emotional resilience that Stoicism encourages. It's a skill that transforms not only your relationships but also your own sense of inner peace. When you make the effort to understand others, you create space for connection, even in the midst of conflict. And isn't that what true strength looks like? Life in all its beauty is as fleeting as a breath of wind, here one moment, gone the next. This truth, though sobering, holds the key to a profound lesson in relationships. Stoicism teaches us to embrace impermanence, a concept encapsulated in the ancient practice of memento mori, remembering that we and everyone we love are mortal. It's not meant to be morbid, rather, it's a reminder to cherish what we have while we have it. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. Imagine applying this wisdom to your relationships. When we truly grasp that our time with loved ones is limited, every moment becomes a gift, every interaction an opportunity to connect more deeply. Think about it. How often do we take the people in our lives for granted? We assume they'll always be there, but life has a way of reminding us how fragile it all is. The Stoics believed that accepting impermanence doesn't diminish our relationships, it enriches them. When we stop putting off meaningful conversations or delaying acts of kindness, we create bonds that are stronger and more authentic. For instance, instead of waiting for a perfect moment to tell someone you appreciate them, do it now. That small gesture, rooted in the awareness of life's impermanence, can transform the way you relate to others. Take a moment to reflect. Is there someone in your life you've been neglecting or assuming will always be there? What would it look like to show up for them today, fully present and intentional? By embracing the transient nature of relationships, we don't just prepare for loss, we learn to live more fully in the moments we have. And in doing so, we honor the Stoic principle of finding beauty in what is fleeting. Think about the last time you felt misunderstood. Maybe you were trying to express something important, but the other person didn't quite grasp your meaning. It's frustrating, isn't it? And often, the root of the problem lies in how we communicate or fail to. Stoicism teaches us that clarity and honesty are the cornerstones of strong, healthy relationships. The Stoics believed that truthfulness wasn't just a virtue, it was a necessity for living a good life. Seneca once said, "Speech is the index of the mind." In other words, the way we speak reflects the way we think. If our thoughts are muddled, our words will be too. But when we communicate with clarity and honesty, we align our words with our intentions, creating a foundation of trust and understanding. One of the most common communication pitfalls is assuming others know what we mean. We might think, they should know how I feel, or they'll figure it out. But Stoicism reminds us that assumptions are the enemy of clarity. When we expect others to read our minds, we set ourselves up for misunderstandings, frustration, and even conflict. Instead, the Stoic approach is to speak plainly and directly without leaving room for interpretation. This doesn't mean being harsh or blunt. It's about being intentional with our words, ensuring that they convey exactly what we mean. For example, instead of saying, "You never help around the house," try, "I feel overwhelmed when I'm handling all the chores alone. Could we work together to find a better balance?" This kind of clear, honest communication opens the door to collaboration rather than blame. So, where in your life could you communicate more clearly? Is there a conversation you've been avoiding because it feels too difficult? Or maybe there's a relationship where misunderstandings keep cropping up. Take a moment to reflect on how you can approach that situation with the Stoic principles of clarity and honesty in mind. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about striving to express yourself in a way that builds connection rather than confusion. When we choose to communicate with intention, we not only improve our relationships but also cultivate a sense of inner peace, knowing that we've done our part to speak truthfully and with care. Have you ever felt frustrated because someone close to you didn't meet your expectations? Maybe you hoped your partner would instinctively know what you needed in a tough moment, or a friend would remember an important detail without being reminded. It's a common experience, but here's the thing: unrealistic expectations can quietly erode even the strongest relationships. The Stoics have a powerful lesson for us here. Let go of what you can't control, and that includes the expectations you place on others. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "If you want to avoid disappointment, stop expecting things to go exactly as you planned." It's a simple yet profound idea. When we cling to rigid expectations, we set ourselves up for frustration, resentment, and even conflict. The Stoics teach us to focus instead on accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. This doesn't mean settling for less or giving up on standards. It means recognizing that people are human, including yourself. They won't always act the way you hope, and that's okay. Here's a practical example. Imagine you've planned a special evening with someone and it doesn't go as you envisioned. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, what if you shifted your perspective? What if you chose to appreciate the effort, the time spent together, or even the unexpected moments that made the night unique? When you release the need for things to be perfect, you open yourself up to contentment and gratitude. Take a moment to reflect. Is there one expectation you're holding on to, maybe something you've been quietly hoping a loved one would do or say, that's causing more stress than it's worth? What would it feel like to let that go? Sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from changing others, but from releasing the weight of your own expectations. And who knows, you might just find that your relationships grow stronger when you meet people where they are, not where you think they should be. When was the last time you expressed gratitude to someone? Not just a quick thank you, but a genuine, heartfelt acknowledgement of what they bring to your life. Stoicism teaches us that gratitude isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a practice, a daily habit that can transform how we see the world and, more importantly, how we connect with others. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This simple reflection reminds us that gratitude starts with recognizing the value in what we already have, including the people around us. Gratitude strengthens relationships because it shifts our focus from what's missing to what's present. It's easy to take people for granted, especially those closest to us. But when we pause to appreciate their efforts, their presence, or even their quirks, we create a deeper sense of connection. Think about it. How does it feel when someone genuinely thanks you for something you've done? It's affirming, isn't it? That same feeling is what you can give to others through small, consistent acts of gratitude. Whether it's thanking a friend for their support, a partner for their patience, or even a colleague for their hard work, these moments build trust and mutual respect. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're having a tough day and your partner does something small but thoughtful. Maybe they make you a cup of tea without being asked. Instead of brushing it off, take a moment to truly thank them. Acknowledge not just the act, but the care behind it. These small gestures, when reciprocated with gratitude, can create a ripple effect of positivity in your relationship. Gratitude doesn't have to be grand or elaborate. It's the sincerity that matters. So take a moment to reflect. Who is one person you're grateful for today? And why? Maybe it's someone who's always been there for you, or perhaps it's someone who surprised you with kindness when you least expected it. Whatever the reason, let that gratitude guide your actions. Write them a note, send a message, or simply tell them how much they mean to you. Because in the end, gratitude isn't just about feeling thankful, it's about letting others know they're valued. And that, in itself, is one of the most powerful ways to nurture and strengthen your relationships. Picture this: you're sitting across from a loved one, maybe a partner, a friend, or a family member, and you can't help but feel frustrated by their habits. Maybe they're always late, or they leave the dishes in the sink, or they have a way of speaking that just grates on your nerves. You've tried to nudge them, to change them, even to outright demand they act differently. But here's the thing, no matter how hard you push, they don't change. And the more you try, the more tension builds between you. Sound familiar? This is where Stoicism offers a profound lesson. Accept others as they are. The Stoics believed that trying to control or change someone else is not only futile but also a source of unnecessary suffering. As Seneca wisely put it, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. In other words, much of our frustration comes from the gap between how we want others to be and how they actually are. When we stop trying to mold them into our ideal version, we free ourselves from that tension. Let's take this into the real world. Imagine you have a friend who's perpetually late. You've tried everything: reminders, jokes, even expressing your annoyance, but nothing works. Instead of fighting it, what if you simply accepted that this is part of who they are, not as a way of giving up, but as a way of releasing the frustration you feel? When you stop expecting them to change, you'll likely find that your relationship becomes lighter, more trusting, and even more enjoyable. Acceptance doesn't mean you agree with their behavior. It means you choose peace over conflict. Now, here's a question to reflect on. Is there someone in your life you struggle to accept as they are? Maybe it's a coworker who talks too much, a family member who always seems to criticize, or a partner who doesn't share your priorities. Take a moment to consider how your attempts to change them have affected your relationship. What might happen if you shifted your focus from changing them to simply understanding them? This isn't about surrendering your values, it's about choosing where to invest your energy. And often, the most powerful choice you can make is to accept what you cannot change. Acceptance isn't passive, it's an active decision to stop fighting reality. It's a practice that builds resilience, fosters deeper connections, and allows you to focus on what truly matters, your own growth and peace of mind. So, the next time you find yourself frustrated by someone else's behavior, take a step back. Ask yourself, is this battle worth fighting, or would I be better off letting go and embracing them as they are? The answer might just transform your relationship and your life. How do you handle disagreements? It's a question we've all faced at some point, whether in our personal relationships, at work, or even within ourselves. Conflict is inevitable, it's part of being human. But what if, instead of dreading it, we saw it as an opportunity for growth? This is where Stoicism offers profound wisdom. The Stoics believed that challenges, including conflict, are not obstacles to avoid but opportunities to strengthen our character and resilience. As Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Think about it. When conflict arises, it's easy to get swept up in emotions, anger, frustration, even fear. But what if, in those moments, we paused and asked ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values? Staying calm during conflict doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or avoiding the issue. It means approaching the situation with clarity and composure, which often leads to more constructive resolutions. For example, imagine you're in a heated discussion with a loved one. Instead of reacting defensively, you take a deep breath, listen actively, and focus on understanding their perspective. This shift in approach can transform the dynamic, turning a potential argument into a moment of connection and mutual growth. Now, take a moment to reflect. Think about a recent conflict in your life. How did you respond? Could you have approached it with more resilience? What would it look like to handle disagreements not as battles to win, but as opportunities to deepen your understanding and strengthen your relationships? Resilience in conflict isn't about being perfect, it's about being present, patient, and purposeful. And the more we practice this mindset, the better equipped we become to navigate life's inevitable challenges with grace and strength. Have you ever been in a conversation where the other person was physically there, but their mind was somewhere else entirely? Maybe they were scrolling on their phone, nodding absently, or just waiting for their turn to speak. It's frustrating, isn't it? Now, flip the script. How often have you been the one who's distracted, only half listening while your thoughts drift to your to-do list or the next thing you need to say? This is where Stoicism steps in with a powerful lesson. Be present in every interaction. The Stoics believed that true connection begins with mindfulness, fully immersing yourself in the moment without letting distractions pull you away. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." In other words, life happens in the present, and relationships thrive when we give them our full attention. Let's make this practical. Think about a recent conversation where you felt truly heard. Chances are the other person wasn't just hearing your words, they were fully engaged, making eye contact and responding thoughtfully. That's the power of presence. When you're fully present, you're not just listening to respond, you're listening to understand. This small shift can transform the way you communicate, making others feel valued and deepening your connections. So here's a challenge for you. Reflect on one interaction today where you could be more present. Maybe it's a chat with a coworker, a phone call with a friend, or even just a quick exchange with a stranger. Commit to giving that moment your full attention. Notice how it changes the dynamic. Presence isn't just a gift to others, it's a gift to yourself, helping you truly experience the richness of each moment. Being present isn't always easy, especially in a world filled with distractions. But when you choose to focus on the person in front of you, you're not just practicing Stoic wisdom, you're building stronger, more meaningful relationships. And isn't that what life is all about? How often do you find yourself caught up in gossip or negative talk? It's something we've all done, maybe without even realizing it. But Stoicism teaches us the importance of guarding our words with care. The Stoics believed that speech is a reflection of our character, and what we say has the power to build or destroy trust. Seneca once said, "A person's speech is a mirror of their soul." Think about that for a moment. Every word we utter reveals something about who we are and what we value. When we engage in gossip or negative talk, we're not just harming others, we're also damaging our own integrity. Gossip erodes trust, creating a toxic environment where relationships can't thrive. Imagine a scenario where two colleagues are constantly whispering about others behind closed doors. Over time, even those who aren't directly involved begin to feel uneasy, wondering if they'll be the next target. Trust breaks down and the entire dynamic suffers. Now, contrast that with a culture of respect and discretion, where people focus on uplifting one another. Relationships grow stronger and connections deepen because everyone feels safe and valued. This isn't just about avoiding harm, it's about actively choosing to build. The Stoics understood that our words carry weight, and they encouraged us to use them wisely. When we resist the temptation to gossip, we create space for more meaningful conversations. Instead of tearing others down, we can focus on what truly matters, fostering understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. Take a moment to reflect on your own speech habits. Are there areas where you could be more mindful? Maybe it's a tendency to vent about someone when you're frustrated, or perhaps it's joining in when others start gossiping. The good news is, small changes can make a big difference. Start by pausing before you speak, asking yourself if your words are true, necessary, and kind. Over time, this practice can transform not just your relationships, but also your own sense of self-respect. The Stoics remind us that true strength lies in self-control, especially when it comes to our words. By choosing to avoid gossip and negative talk, we honor not only those around us, but also the best version of ourselves. Have you ever carried a grudge so heavy it felt like it was weighing you down? Maybe it was a friend who betrayed your trust, a partner who let you down, or even a family member who said something that cut deep. Those wounds can linger, shaping how we see the world and how we interact with others. But here's the thing, holding on to resentment doesn't punish the other person, it punishes you. It keeps you stuck in the past, chained to emotions that no longer serve you. The Stoics had a radical yet profoundly simple perspective on forgiveness. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He reminds us that while we can't control the actions of others, we can control how we respond. Forgiveness, in this sense, isn't about excusing someone's behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of bitterness. It's choosing inner peace over prolonged suffering. Let's make this practical. Imagine a friendship that fell apart because of a misunderstanding. Maybe harsh words were exchanged and now there's silence between you. The Stoic approach would be to ask yourself, what's within my control here? You can't force the other person to apologize or even acknowledge their role. But you can decide to release the anger. You can choose to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to move forward. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it does mean letting go of the emotional weight that's holding you back. So here's a challenge for you. Think about one person in your life you've been holding a grudge against. What would it feel like to let that go? Not because they've earned it, but because you're ready to reclaim your peace. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and in doing so, you open the door to healthier, more meaningful relationships. Do your actions align with your values? It's a question worth asking, especially when it comes to relationships. The Stoics believed that true character isn't defined by what we say, but by what we do. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be one." This isn't just about personal growth, it's about how our behavior influences those around us. When we live with integrity, we don't just improve ourselves, we set a standard for others to follow. Think about it this way: in relationships, words can only go so far. Promises and declarations are important, but they ring hollow if they're not backed by consistent actions. If you value kindness, for instance, don't just talk about it, show it. When you model kindness, even in small, everyday moments, it has a ripple effect. People notice, and often they're inspired to act with the same compassion. This is the power of leading by example. It's not about grand gestures, it's about the quiet, consistent choices that reflect your deepest values. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Where could you lead by example? Maybe it's in how you handle disagreements, showing patience instead of frustration. Or perhaps it's in the way you support a friend, offering your time and attention without expecting anything in return. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require you to be perfect, it simply asks you to try. Every step you take toward living virtuously not only strengthens your relationships but also encourages others to do the same. So, what's one area where your actions could speak louder than your words today? Think about this. In a world where social media followers, likes, and connections often feel like the measure of success, it's easy to get caught up in the numbers game. But what if the real value lies not in how many people you know, but in how deeply you know them? The Stoics had a lot to say about this, and Seneca, in particular, emphasized the importance of quality over quantity when it comes to relationships. He once wrote, "If you consider any man a friend whom you do not trust as you trust yourself, you are mightily mistaken." This isn't just about trust, it's about the depth of connection, the kind that withstands time and hardship. The Stoic approach to relationships isn't about collecting acquaintances or maintaining a vast network of casual connections. It's about cultivating a few genuine, meaningful bonds that enrich your life and challenge you to grow. These are the relationships that bring stability, understanding, and mutual respect. They're the ones where you can be your truest self without fear of judgment or pretense. And here's the thing, when you focus on deepening these connections, you'll find that they provide far more fulfillment than 100 superficial ones ever could. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you have two friends. One is someone you see occasionally, share small talk with, and maybe grab a coffee with every now and then. The other is someone you've known for years, someone who's been there through your highs and lows, someone who knows your flaws and strengths and still chooses to stand by you. Which relationship do you think will sustain you during tough times? Which one will challenge you to be better, to think more deeply, to act with integrity? The answer is clear. It's the latter, the relationship built on depth, not surface-level interaction. So here's a question to reflect on. Who are the people in your life that truly matter? Who are the ones you trust, the ones who inspire you, the ones who push you to be your best self? Take a moment to think about those relationships. How are you nurturing them? Are you investing the time and energy they deserve? Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many people fill your life. It's about how deeply a few can touch your soul. How well do you know yourself? It's a question that might sound simple, but it's one of the most profound challenges we face. The Stoics believed that self-awareness is the foundation of all wisdom, and it's especially crucial when it comes to our relationships. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, understanding who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers, and your values is the first step toward building healthier, more meaningful connections with others. This is why the Stoics practiced daily self-reflection. They didn't just go through their days on autopilot. Instead, they took time each evening to look back on their actions, their reactions, and their interactions. They asked themselves questions like, did I act in alignment with my values today? Where did I fall short? How can I do better tomorrow? This practice wasn't about self-criticism, it was about growth. It was about becoming more aware of the patterns in their behavior, especially in how they related to others. Let's bring this into a practical context. Imagine you've had a disagreement with someone close to you. Maybe it escalated into an argument and you're left feeling frustrated or misunderstood. Now take a moment to reflect. What role did you play in that situation? Did you listen fully, or were you more focused on defending your point of view? Did you respond with patience, or did your emotions take over? Self-reflection helps you see these patterns clearly. It's not about assigning blame. It's about understanding how your actions and reactions influence the dynamics of your relationships. So here's a challenge for you. Think about one area of self-improvement you're currently working on. Maybe it's becoming a better listener, managing your temper, or being more present in your interactions. Whatever it is, take a few minutes tonight to reflect on how you showed up in that area today. Were you proud of your progress? Did you notice moments where you could have done better? This simple practice, done consistently, can transform not just how you see yourself, but how you show up for the people in your life. Imagine this: you're in a conversation, and someone makes a comment that feels like a jab. Maybe it's a sarcastic remark, a dismissive tone, or even a direct insult. Your first instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself, or to let your emotions take the wheel. But here's the thing: responding in the heat of the moment rarely leads to anything productive. In fact, it often escalates tensions and damages relationships. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. What he's getting at is this: while you can't control how others act, you can control how you respond, and that response is where your true power lies. Let's break it down. When someone provokes you, it's easy to feel like you're being attacked, like you have to react immediately to set things right. But Stoicism teaches us to pause, to take a breath, and to ask ourselves, what's really at stake here? Is this comment worth jeopardizing your peace of mind or the relationship? Often, the answer is no. By choosing to respond with calmness instead of anger, you not only protect your own emotional well-being but also create space for the other person to reflect. Think about it. When someone expects a heated reaction and instead gets calm, it can completely shift the dynamic. It's disarming, and it often leads to more productive conversations. Here's a practical example. Let's say a coworker makes a snide remark about your work during a meeting. Your initial reaction might be to snap back or defend yourself in front of everyone. But what if instead you took a moment to breathe and responded with something like, "I hear your concern. Let's discuss how we can improve this after the meeting." This approach not only de-escalates the situation but also demonstrates emotional maturity. It shows that you're focused on solutions, not conflicts. Now think about a recent moment when you felt provoked. Maybe it was a comment from a friend, a family member, or even a stranger. How did you respond? Did you react impulsively, or did you take a step back and choose calmness? The beauty of Stoicism is that it gives us tools to pause and reflect in those moments, to act with intention rather than emotion. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. So, the next time you feel provoked, remember, your reaction is your choice, and that choice has the power to transform not just the moment but the relationship itself. How do you handle delays or setbacks in your relationships? Do you find yourself rushing to resolve conflicts or pushing for quick fixes? In the Stoic view, patience isn't just a passive virtue, it's an active choice to allow things to unfold as they should. Seneca once said, "Time heals what reason cannot." This reminds us that some things simply require the space and time to grow, and rushing them can often do more harm than good. Think about a long-term relationship, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or a family member. There are moments when misunderstandings arise or when progress feels slow. Instead of forcing a resolution, patience allows you to step back and let the situation breathe. It's about trusting the process and understanding that not every problem needs an immediate solution. Sometimes the best thing you can do is give the other person and yourself the grace of time. Now take a moment to reflect. Where in your own life could you practice more patience? Is there a relationship where you've been pushing too hard or expecting too much too soon? By choosing patience, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're creating the conditions for deeper connection and understanding to flourish. After all, the strongest relationships aren't built overnight. They're nurtured through time, trust, and the willingness to wait. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to so many requests that your calendar looks like a jigsaw puzzle with no room to breathe? Maybe you agreed to help a friend move, promised to attend a coworker's event, and committed to organizing a family gathering, all in the same weekend. It feels noble at first, but over time, overcommitting leaves you drained, resentful, and unable to show up fully for anyone, including yourself. This is where Stoicism offers a powerful lesson. Be honest about your limits. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." At its core, this means recognizing your capacity and respecting your boundaries. It's not selfish to say no, it's an act of self-respect and wisdom. When you overextend yourself, you're not just stretching thin, you're also setting yourself up to let others down. Think about it. If you're exhausted and overwhelmed, can you really give your best to your relationships? Probably not, and that's where the damage begins. Let's bring this to life with a practical example. Imagine you're a friend who always says yes to every favor asked of you. Over time, people come to expect your constant availability, and they might even take it for granted. But if you suddenly hit a breaking point because you've neglected your own needs, the relationships suffer. You might snap at someone you care about, or worse, quietly withdraw because you feel unappreciated. Now picture the alternative. You set clear boundaries from the start. You say, "I'd love to help, but I can't this weekend. Let's find another time." The result, the people in your life begin to respect your time, and you show up for them and for yourself with more energy and presence. So here's a challenge for you. Take a moment to reflect on one boundary you need to set. Maybe it's saying no to extra work projects, carving out time for self-care, or simply being honest when you're feeling overwhelmed. Remember, setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out, it's about creating space for healthier, more meaningful connections. And that's something worth striving for. How often do you admit when you're wrong? It's not an easy question to answer, is it? Most of us struggle with this after all. No one likes to feel vulnerable or exposed. But here's the thing, humility isn't about weakness, it's about strength. It's about having the courage to acknowledge your imperfections and the wisdom to learn from them. For the Stoics, humility was a cornerstone of building meaningful relationships. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "You will find more contentment in the woods than in the streets." You will find contentment wherever you are if you carry your own modesty with you. What he's saying is that humility isn't just an outward behavior, it's an inner state of mind. It's about recognizing that you're not above anyone else and that every interaction is an opportunity to grow. Let's take this into a practical context. Imagine you're in a disagreement with a loved one. Maybe you said something hurtful in the heat of the moment, or perhaps you made a decision that affected them negatively. Now you have a choice. You can dig in your heels, defend your position, and risk widening the rift. Or you can take a step back, admit your mistake, and apologize. That second option, the one that requires humility, is where real connection begins. When you own up to your errors, it shows the other person that you value the relationship more than your ego. It builds trust, deepens respect, and often opens the door for mutual understanding. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Can you think of a time when humility improved one of your relationships? Maybe it was a simple apology that smoothed over a misunderstanding, or perhaps it was a moment of vulnerability that brought you closer to someone. Humility has a way of breaking down walls and creating space for genuine connection. It's not about diminishing yourself, it's about elevating the relationship, and that's a lesson worth practicing every day. Think about the strongest relationships in your life, the ones that feel unshakable even in the face of challenges. What holds them together? It's rarely just shared interests or hobbies. Instead, it's something deeper, shared values. The Stoics understood this profoundly. They believed that the foundation of any meaningful relationship isn't built on fleeting attractions or superficial traits, but on a shared commitment to virtue and principle. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better person of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." This isn't about finding someone who agrees with you on everything. It's about aligning with those who share your core beliefs about what truly matters in life. When relationships are rooted in shared values, they become far more resilient. Imagine two people who value honesty above all else. Even in moments of conflict, their mutual respect for truth creates a space where misunderstandings can be resolved with clarity and trust. Or consider a friendship where both individuals prioritize kindness and service to others. Their shared commitment to these principles strengthens their bond, making it easier to navigate life's ups and downs together. These aren't just ideals, they're practical tools for building deeper, more meaningful connections. So, what about you? What values do you hold most dear, and how do they show up in your relationships? Take a moment to reflect on the people closest to you. Do you share a common vision for what it means to live well, to act with integrity, or to contribute to the world? Identifying these shared values isn't just an exercise in self-awareness, it's a way to nurture the relationships that matter most. When we focus on what unites us rather than what divides us, we create a foundation that can withstand the test of time. And isn't that what we all want? Relationships that grow stronger, not weaker, as life unfolds. Have you ever found yourself constantly leaning on your partner for emotional support, validation, or even decision-making? It's easy to fall into the trap of overdependence, especially in close relationships. But here's the thing, Stoicism teaches us that true strength comes from within. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This isn't about pushing people away or isolating yourself. It's about cultivating inner resilience so you can bring your best self to any relationship. Think about it this way, if you're overly reliant on someone else for your happiness or sense of purpose, you're handing them the keys to your emotional well-being. That's a lot of pressure for both of you. A healthy relationship thrives when both individuals can stand on their own, bringing their own strengths, passions, and stability to the table. It's like two trees growing side by side. Each has its own roots, but together they create a stronger, more resilient ecosystem. So how do you strike that balance? Start by identifying areas where you might be leaning too heavily on someone else. Maybe it's always seeking reassurance or relying on your partner to solve problems for you. The Stoics would encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself, what can I do to build my own confidence and resourcefulness here? By practicing self-reliance in small, meaningful ways, you not only strengthen yourself but also enrich your relationships. Now take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could you practice a little more independence? It doesn't have to be a massive change. Maybe it's making a decision on your own, or finding ways to soothe your own anxieties instead of immediately turning to someone else. Remember, the goal isn't to go it alone, but to grow in a way that allows you to contribute more fully to the connections that matter most. When was the last time you gave without expecting anything in return? This simple question can reveal a lot about how we approach our relationships. Stoicism teaches us that generosity isn't just about material gifts, it's about the spirit of giving itself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What we do now echoes in eternity." And when we give freely without strings attached, we create ripples of goodwill that strengthen our connections with others. At its core, Stoic generosity is a virtue rooted in selflessness. It's not about keeping score or waiting for a favor in return. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and acting with kindness because it's the right thing to do. Think about it. When you give without expectation, you're practicing a form of inner freedom. You're not tied to outcomes or external validation. You're simply choosing to contribute to someone else's well-being. And that act alone can deepen trust and understanding in any relationship. Consider the power of small, everyday acts of generosity. Maybe it's offering a listening ear to a friend who's had a tough day, or helping a colleague with a task when they're overwhelmed. These moments might seem insignificant, but they carry immense weight. They show the other person that you value them, not for what they can do for you, but simply because they matter. Over time, these gestures build a foundation of mutual respect and care that can transform even the most strained relationships. So, here's a challenge for you. Think about one way you could be more generous today. It doesn't have to be grand or elaborate. It could be as simple as sending a thoughtful message or holding the door open for someone. The key is to do it with no thought of reward. Notice how it feels to give freely and observe how it impacts the people around you. You might just find that the act of giving becomes its own reward, a reminder of the strength and beauty of human connection. Have you ever been on the receiving end of harsh feedback? Maybe it was from a boss, a friend, or even a loved one. It stings, doesn't it? But here's the thing, criticism, no matter how painful, is one of life's greatest teachers. The Stoics understood this deeply. Instead of viewing criticism as an attack, they saw it as a mirror reflecting areas where we could grow. Seneca once said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, Do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." What he's pointing to is the idea that criticism, even when it feels unfair, often reveals truths we might not want to face, and facing those truths is where real growth begins. So, how can we apply this in our relationships? Imagine a scenario where your partner points out a habit they find frustrating. Maybe it's leaving dishes in the sink or interrupting them during conversations. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself or dismiss their concern. But what if, instead of reacting defensively, you paused and asked yourself, "Is there something here I can learn?" By accepting their feedback with grace, you're not just improving the relationship, you're showing them that their perspective matters. This creates trust and opens the door for deeper communication. Now think about the last time someone criticized you. How did you respond? Did you shut down, argue, or take it personally? Or did you take a moment to reflect on what was said? The Stoic approach isn't about agreeing with every critique. It's about using it as an opportunity to examine yourself honestly. Criticism, when handled well, can be a gift. It's a chance to see ourselves more clearly and to grow into better versions of who we are. So, the next time someone offers you feedback, even if it's delivered imperfectly, try to meet it with curiosity rather than defensiveness. You might just find that it leads to a stronger, more meaningful connection. It's no secret that we live in a world that thrives on comparison. From scrolling through social media to measuring our achievements against others, it's easy to fall into the trap of constantly evaluating our relationships, careers, and lives based on someone else's highlight reel. But here's the thing: comparison doesn't just steal our joy. It distorts our perspective and creates a false sense of lack. This is where Stoicism offers a powerful antidote. The Stoics remind us that every person walks their own unique path, and true contentment comes from focusing on what's within our control, not on how we stack up against others. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, put it simply: "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." In other words, the key to satisfaction lies not in measuring ourselves against others, but in appreciating what we already have. Imagine this: instead of envying your friend's seemingly perfect relationship or feeling inadequate because your neighbor's life looks more glamorous, you take a step back and ask yourself, what am I grateful for in my own life? This shift in focus can be transformative. Let's make this practical. Think about a time when you compared your relationship to someone else's. Maybe you saw a couple on vacation and wondered why your own relationship didn't seem as exciting. But here's the truth: what you see is rarely the full picture. Every relationship has its challenges, its quiet moments, and its unique strengths. By avoiding comparisons, you free yourself to appreciate what makes your own connection special. You start to see the beauty in the ordinary, the value in the small, meaningful gestures that often go unnoticed when we're too busy looking elsewhere. So, here's a challenge for you. Take a moment to reflect on one area of your life where you've been comparing yourself to others. It could be your relationship, your career, or even your personal growth. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can appreciate about my own journey right now? By shifting your focus inward, you'll find that the less you compare, the more you'll discover to be grateful for. And that's where true fulfillment begins. How often do you truly listen to others, not just hearing their words, but really absorbing their meaning, their emotions, their perspective? In the Stoic tradition, active listening is more than a habit, it's a virtue. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Part of that power lies in how we choose to engage with others. By listening deeply, we show respect, build trust, and create space for genuine connection. Think about this: when someone feels truly heard, it's like opening a door to understanding. Active listening isn't just about waiting for your turn to speak. It's about being fully present, setting aside distractions, and giving the other person your undivided attention. This is where the Stoic practice of self-control comes into play. Instead of reacting impulsively or defensively, you pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully. Here's a practical example. Imagine a heated argument where both sides feel misunderstood. Instead of escalating the tension, what if one person chose to actively listen? By focusing on the other's words and emotions, they might uncover the root of the misunderstanding. This small shift can transform conflict into clarity, resentment into resolution. Now, take a moment to reflect. Can you recall a recent conversation where you could have listened more attentively? Maybe you were distracted, rushed, or preoccupied with your own thoughts. What might have changed if you had paused and truly engaged? This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every time you practice active listening, you strengthen your relationships and deepen your understanding of the world around you. Picture this: you offer to help a coworker with a project, but deep down, your real motivation is to impress the boss and secure a promotion. On the surface, it seems like a kind gesture, but the intention behind it is self-serving. Now, contrast that with helping someone simply because you care about their success. Which one do you think builds a stronger, more authentic connection? This is where Stoicism steps in, reminding us that the purity of our intentions matters just as much as our actions. The Stoics believed that virtuous intentions are the foundation of meaningful relationships. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: "A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer." In other words, it's not just what you do, it's why you do it. When your intentions align with virtues like kindness, generosity, and sincerity, your actions carry a deeper impact. People can sense the authenticity behind your efforts, and that's what fosters trust and connection. Let's bring this into a real-world scenario. Imagine you're having a disagreement with a friend. Instead of arguing to prove you're right, you pause and ask yourself, am I trying to resolve this because I care about our relationship, or am I just trying to win? When your intention shifts from winning to understanding, the whole dynamic changes. You listen more, react less, and approach the situation with empathy. This small shift in intention can transform conflict into an opportunity for growth and deeper connection. Now, take a moment to reflect. Think about a recent interaction you had, whether it was with a family member, a friend, or even a stranger. What was your intention going into that moment? Were you acting out of genuine care, or was there an underlying motive? Stoicism invites us to examine these intentions regularly, not to judge ourselves harshly, but to grow. When we act with pure intentions, we not only improve our relationships but also cultivate a sense of inner peace, knowing we're living in alignment with our values. So the next time you're about to act, pause and ask yourself, why am I doing this? That simple question can be the key to building relationships that are not only strong but also deeply meaningful. You're rushing through your morning, already late for work, and as you grab your coffee, it spills all over the counter. In that moment, it feels like the end of the world. You snap at the person closest to you, maybe even throw your hands up in frustration. Sound familiar? We've all been there, letting a small inconvenience spiral into a big emotional reaction. But what if I told you that Stoicism teaches us a better way? The Stoics believed in something called proportionality, matching the size of your reaction to the size of the problem. As Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about that for a moment. A spilled coffee, a misplaced key, or a rude comment from a stranger, these are all minor events. Yet when we overreact, we give them far more power than they deserve. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Instead of letting frustration take over, you pause. You remind yourself that this interruption doesn't define your worth or the value of your ideas. By staying calm, you not only maintain your composure but also prevent the situation from escalating into unnecessary tension. Now, take a moment to reflect. Can you think of a recent time when you overreacted to something small? Maybe it was a traffic jam, a forgotten errand, or a minor disagreement with a loved one. How might things have gone differently if you'd approached it with a sense of perspective? The truth is, most of the things we react to so intensely aren't worth the emotional energy we pour into them. Stoicism invites us to step back and ask ourselves, is this worth my peace of mind? Is this worth damaging my relationships or my mood? When we pause and choose our responses wisely, we regain control over our emotions and over our lives. It's not about ignoring problems or pretending they don't exist. It's about recognizing what truly matters and letting the small stuff go. How consistent are you in your actions? It's a simple question, but one that can reveal a lot about the state of your relationships. The Stoics placed immense value on consistency, seeing it as a cornerstone of trust and integrity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Just as our feet naturally find their way on familiar paths, so too should our actions align with what we value most." This idea of steadfastness isn't just about being reliable, it's about building a foundation of trust that others can depend on day in and day out. Think about it. When someone consistently shows up for you, whether it's through their words, their actions, or their presence, it creates a sense of security. You know what to expect, and that predictability fosters deeper connections. On the flip side, inconsistency, whether it's canceling plans last minute, breaking promises, or wavering in your commitments, can erode trust over time. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. Without a solid base, everything else becomes unstable. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you have a friend who always follows through on their word. When they say they'll call, they do. When they promise to help, they show up. Over time, this reliability strengthens your bond because you know you can count on them no matter what. Now contrast that with someone who's unpredictable, someone who might be there one day and absent the next. Which relationship feels more meaningful? Which one would you invest more in? So here's a thought to carry forward. Where in your life could you practice more consistency? Maybe it's in keeping your promises, showing up on time, or simply being present when someone needs you. Small, consistent actions have a ripple effect, creating trust and deepening connections in ways that grand gestures often can't. Consistency isn't about perfection, it's about showing up again and again with intention and care. What's one area where you can start today? How often do you find yourself waiting for someone else to tell you that you've done a good job? Maybe it's your partner, a friend, or even a coworker. That moment when you're hoping for their praise or approval, it's something we've all experienced. But here's the thing, relying on others to validate your worth doesn't just drain you, it can weaken the very relationships you care about most. The Stoics had a clear stance on this. They believed that seeking external validation is like building your house on sand. It's unstable, unreliable, and ultimately it won't hold up. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: if you wish to be loved, love yourself first. In other words, your sense of worth should come from within, not from the opinions or approval of others. Think about it this way: when you're constantly looking for someone else to affirm your value, you're giving them control over your emotions. If they praise you, you feel good. If they don't, you feel inadequate. This dynamic can create tension in relationships because it shifts the focus from genuine connection to a need for validation. But what happens when you start relying on internal validation instead? When you stop waiting for others to tell you you're enough, something changes. You become more confident, more secure in yourself, and that confidence radiates into your relationships. You're no longer seeking approval. You're simply being present, engaging authentically, and showing up as your best self. Here's a practical example. Imagine you've just done something thoughtful for your partner. Maybe you cooked their favorite meal or planned a surprise date night. Instead of anxiously waiting for them to thank you or compliment you, you take a moment to appreciate your own effort. You acknowledge that you did something kind because it aligns with your values, not because you needed their praise. That shift in mindset can transform the way you relate to others. So let's pause for a moment. Reflect on one area of your life where you often seek validation from others. Is it at work, in your friendships, or maybe in your romantic relationships? Whatever it is, consider this. What would it feel like to let go of that need for external approval and instead focus on valuing yourself? This isn't about ignoring feedback or becoming indifferent to others. It's about building a foundation of self-worth that allows you to engage with the world and the people in it from a place of strength, not insecurity. When you stop seeking validation, you start building healthier, more authentic connections, and that's where true relationships thrive. How often do you show compassion to others? It's easy to get caught up in our own struggles and forget the power of extending kindness to those around us. The Stoics, often misunderstood as emotionless, actually placed great value on compassion. They saw it not as a weakness but as a profound strength, a way to connect deeply with others while maintaining inner peace. Epictetus once said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval." This grounding allows us to empathize without losing ourselves, to care without being consumed by others' emotions. Compassion, in the Stoic sense, is about balance, understanding another's pain without letting it overwhelm us. Think about the last time someone showed you genuine kindness during a difficult moment. Maybe it was a simple gesture, like a friend listening without judgment or a stranger offering a helping hand. These small acts of compassion can transform relationships, creating bonds that go beyond surface-level interactions. They remind us that we're not alone in our struggles, that others see and care about our humanity. And the beautiful thing, compassion is contagious. When you extend it to someone, they're more likely to pass it on, creating a ripple effect of connection and understanding. So, how can you practice more compassion in your own life? Start small. Next time you notice someone struggling, pause for a moment. Instead of rushing past or offering advice, just listen. Acknowledge their feelings without trying to fix everything. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is simply be present. Reflect on one way you could show more compassion today, whether it's to a loved one, a coworker, or even yourself. Because in the end, fostering deeper connections isn't just about making others feel seen and valued. It's about enriching your own life with the warmth of shared humanity. Have you ever found yourself replaying an old argument in your mind, holding onto a hurtful comment or a moment where you felt wronged? Maybe it was a friend who betrayed your trust or a family member who said something unkind. That feeling of resentment can linger, quietly eating away at your peace like a slow poison in your relationships. The Stoics understood this deeply, and Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." It's a powerful reminder that holding onto grudges doesn't punish the other person, it punishes you. When you cling to resentment, you're essentially giving that person or event control over your emotional state. You're allowing the past to dictate your present. The Stoics believed in focusing on what's within your control, your thoughts, your actions, and your responses. Letting go of a grudge isn't about excusing someone's behavior or pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of bitterness so you can move forward with clarity and strength. Think about a time when forgiveness healed a broken connection. Maybe you had a falling out with a close friend, and after months or even years of silence, one of you reached out to mend the relationship. That act of forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it created space for something new to grow. It's a practical example of how releasing resentment can restore trust and rebuild bonds. Now take a moment to reflect on your own life. Is there a grudge you've been holding onto? How does it affect your daily thoughts or interactions? Maybe it's a small annoyance that's grown into something bigger, or perhaps it's a deep wound that still feels raw. Whatever it is, consider this. What would it feel like to let it go, not for the other person's sake, but for your own? What freedom might you gain by releasing that burden? The Stoic approach to grudges isn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing to prioritize your inner peace over the fleeting satisfaction of holding onto anger. Because in the end, the person who benefits most from forgiveness is you. How disciplined are you in your commitments? It's a simple question, but one that cuts to the core of how we show up for others and for ourselves. In the Stoic philosophy, self-discipline isn't just about willpower or control. It's about aligning your actions with your values. Seneca once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And when it comes to relationships, that victory is everything. Think about it. Every time you follow through on a promise, every time you resist the urge to react impulsively, you're building trust. You're showing the people in your life that you're reliable, that your word means something. That's the power of self-discipline in relationships. It's the glue that holds connection together. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you've promised to spend quality time with a loved one, but you're tempted to cancel because you're tired or distracted. In that moment, choosing to honor your commitment, even when it's hard, sends a clear message. This relationship matters to you. It's not just about the time spent together. It's about the trust that grows when someone knows they can count on you. Now think about your own life. Where could a little more self-discipline make a difference? Maybe it's being more present in conversations or sticking to a routine that strengthens your mental clarity. Whatever it is, start small. The Stoics believed that mastery over oneself begins with small, consistent actions, and over time, those actions add up, transforming not just your relationships but your entire way of being. Picture this: you've been in a relationship for years and suddenly something shifts. Maybe your partner starts pursuing a new career, or perhaps they develop interests that feel unfamiliar to you. At first, it's easy to resist, to cling to the way things were. But here's the truth: relationships, like life itself, are constantly evolving. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that impermanence is not something to fear but something to accept with grace. As Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." In other words, our ability to adapt is what defines our strength in relationships. Think about it. When we resist change, we create unnecessary tension. It's like trying to hold onto water. It slips through your fingers no matter how tightly you grip. But when we embrace change, we open the door to growth. For instance, imagine your partner decides to take up a new hobby that initially doesn't interest you. Instead of dismissing it, what if you joined them? Or simply supported their passion? That small act of flexibility could deepen your connection in ways you never expected. Change doesn't have to mean loss. It can be an opportunity to rediscover each other, to build something even stronger than before. So here's a question to reflect on. Is there a change in your relationship that you've been resisting? Maybe it's something small, like a shift in routine, or something bigger, like a lifestyle change. How might approaching it with openness and curiosity transform the way you relate to one another? The Stoics remind us that flexibility isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And in relationships, that wisdom can be the bridge to lasting connection. What have you learned from a difficult relationship? It's easy to focus on the pain or frustration that comes with conflict, but Stoicism offers a different perspective, one where challenges are seen as opportunities for growth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the very obstacles we face in our relationships can become the tools that help us grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Think about it. Every disagreement, every misunderstanding, every moment of tension is a chance to practice patience, empathy, and understanding. When we approach these difficulties with gratitude, we shift our mindset from seeing them as burdens to recognizing them as teachers. A strained conversation with a partner might teach us how to communicate more clearly. A falling out with a friend could help us set healthier boundaries. Even the most painful experiences can leave us with valuable lessons if we're willing to look for them. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're in a relationship where you and your partner constantly argue about the same issue. Instead of feeling defeated, try asking yourself, what is this challenge showing me about my own needs or communication style? How can I grow from this? By expressing gratitude for the opportunity to improve, you're not only reframing the situation but also creating space for deeper connection and understanding. Now take a moment to reflect. What's one challenge in your relationships that you're grateful for? Maybe it's a tough conversation that brought you closer, or a conflict that taught you something new about yourself. When we start to see challenges as gifts, we unlock a powerful way to transform our relationships and ourselves. Have you ever found yourself replaying a conversation in your head, obsessing over a single comment someone made, wondering what they really meant? Maybe it was an offhand remark from a friend or a casual comment from a partner, but suddenly your mind spirals into a whirlwind of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Overthinking can feel like a mental trap, and when it comes to relationships, it can do more harm than good. Stoicism offers a powerful antidote to this modern struggle. Focus on what's within your control. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that for a moment. How much of your mental energy is spent worrying about things that haven't happened or might never happen? When we overanalyze, we're often reacting to imagined scenarios rather than the actual reality in front of us. This not only creates unnecessary stress, but can also distort our perception of the people around us, turning small misunderstandings into mountains of doubt. So how do we break free from this cycle? Start by asking yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, let it go. If it's yes, focus on taking clear, intentional action. For example, instead of obsessing over whether a friend's comment was meant to be critical, you could simply ask them for clarification. This shift from overthinking to direct communication not only reduces anxiety but also strengthens trust and understanding in your relationships. Here's a practical way to apply this. The next time you catch yourself overanalyzing, pause and ask, what's the simplest, most straightforward way to address this? Often, the solution is far simpler than the web of thoughts we've woven. By simplifying your approach, you create space for clearer, more meaningful connections. Now, take a moment to reflect. Can you think of a recent situation where overthinking complicated things? How might you handle it differently if you focused only on what's within your control? Sometimes the key to better relationships isn't about solving every mystery, it's about learning to let go of the need to figure everything out. How often do you give your undivided time to others? Not just the moments when you're physically there but mentally distracted, scrolling through your phone or thinking about the next task on your to-do list. True presence, being fully there for someone, is one of the most profound gifts you can offer. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus once said, "Time is the most valuable thing a person can spend." And he wasn't just talking about productivity or personal goals. He meant that the way we give our time to others reflects our values and our care for them. Think about it. In a world where everyone is rushing, where distractions are constant, the act of truly being present with someone is a rare and meaningful gesture. It's not about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about showing up, listening, and making someone feel seen. When you give someone your time, you're saying, "You matter to me." This moment matters. That's a powerful message, one that can transform even the simplest interactions into something deeply meaningful. Here's a practical example. Imagine a friend who's going through a tough time. You could send them a quick text to check in, which is thoughtful, but what if you took an hour out of your day to sit with them, to listen without interrupting, without trying to fix things? That kind of presence creates a connection that words alone can't achieve. It builds trust, deepens understanding, and strengthens the bond between you. So, here's a question to reflect on. Who in your life could use more of your undivided attention? Maybe it's a family member you haven't spent quality time with lately, or a friend who's been reaching out but hasn't gotten your full focus. Take a moment to think about one person you can prioritize this week. How might your relationship with them grow if you gave them the gift of your presence? The Stoics remind us that time is finite, but how we choose to spend it can leave a lasting impact on the people we care about. Have you ever found yourself frustrated because your partner didn't meet your expectations? Maybe they left the dishes in the sink or forgot to pick up something from the store. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting everything and everyone to be perfect. But here's the truth. Perfectionism doesn't just strain relationships, it can suffocate them. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that expecting perfection from others, or even from ourselves, is a recipe for disappointment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." In other words, embracing imperfection is not just a choice, it's a way of life. Think about it. When we demand perfection from those around us, we're setting them up to fail. No one can live up to an impossible standard, and the constant pressure to do so creates tension, resentment, and distance. But what if, instead of seeking flawlessness, we chose to focus on what truly matters: connection, understanding, and growth? Imagine how much lighter your relationships would feel if you released the need for everything to be just so. For instance, instead of nitpicking over small mistakes, you could appreciate the effort someone puts in, even if it's not perfect. This shift in mindset can transform the way you relate to others, fostering a sense of ease and acceptance. So take a moment to reflect. Where in your life are you chasing perfection? Is it in your relationships, your work, or even how you see yourself? What would it feel like to let go of that expectation, even just a little? By embracing imperfection, you're not settling, you're creating space for deeper, more meaningful connections. After all, as the Stoics remind us, life is messy, and that's exactly what makes it beautiful. When was the last time you noticed a small act of kindness? Maybe it was a smile from a stranger, a thoughtful gesture from a loved one, or even a quiet moment of peace in a hectic day. These little things often go unnoticed, but they hold immense power to strengthen the bonds we share with others. Stoicism teaches us to practice mindfulness, to truly be present in each moment, and to find gratitude in the simplest of experiences. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." This wisdom reminds us that life's richness isn't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet, everyday moments we often overlook. Take a moment to think about how gratitude for these small moments can deepen your relationships. When you express appreciation for the little things, like your partner making you coffee in the morning or a friend remembering a detail you shared, you're not just acknowledging their actions, you're reinforcing the connection between you. It's these small, consistent acts of gratitude that build trust, foster kindness, and create a foundation of mutual respect. So, here's a challenge for you. Identify one small moment today that you're grateful for. Maybe it's the way the sunlight filters through your window, or the way someone's laughter brightened your day. By practicing this kind of mindfulness, you're not just improving your relationships, you're cultivating a deeper sense of joy and contentment in your own life. Have you ever found yourself replaying a comment someone made, wondering why they said it or what they really meant? Maybe a coworker made an offhand remark, or a friend seemed distant and it stuck with you all day. It's easy to feel like these moments are personal attacks, but Stoicism offers a powerful reminder. Not everything is about you. In fact, most of the time, people's words and actions have far more to do with their own internal struggles than with you. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: when someone criticizes or insults you, it's not you who is harmed, but their own character that's revealed. This shift in perspective is transformative. Instead of absorbing the negativity or assuming malicious intent, Stoicism teaches us to step back and ask, what's really going on here? By separating someone's actions from their intentions, we free ourselves from unnecessary emotional turmoil. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague snaps at you during a discussion. Your first instinct might be to feel hurt or defensive, but pause for a moment. Consider that their reaction could be fueled by stress, insecurity, or even unrelated personal challenges. When you choose not to take it personally, you not only protect your own peace but also create space for understanding and resolution. This approach can dramatically reduce conflict both at work and in personal relationships. Here's a reflection for you. Think about a recent moment when you felt slighted or misunderstood. How did you react? Could you reframe that situation by considering the other person's perspective or circumstances? By practicing this Stoic principle, you'll find that letting go of the need to take things personally isn't just liberating, it's a step toward building more resilient and harmonious relationships. How have your relationships shaped you? It's a question worth sitting with, because the people in our lives, whether they bring joy, challenge, or even conflict, play a profound role in who we become. The Stoics believed that growth isn't something we achieve in isolation. It happens through connection, through the way we interact with others and respond to the lessons they bring. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, because an artful life requires being prepared to meet and withstand sudden and unexpected attacks." Relationships, in many ways, are that wrestling match. They push us, test us, and ultimately help us grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Think about the people who have challenged you the most. Maybe it's a friend who's always honest, even when the truth stings, or a partner who pushes you to confront your fears. These relationships, though sometimes difficult, are gifts in disguise. They teach us patience, humility, and the value of perspective. The Stoics remind us that every interaction is an opportunity to practice virtue, whether it's gratitude, forgiveness, or understanding. Instead of resisting the friction, we can choose to see it as a catalyst for growth. Here's a practical way to apply this. Start by practicing gratitude for the growth your relationships bring, even when it's uncomfortable. For example, imagine a coworker who constantly challenges your ideas. Instead of seeing them as an obstacle, reflect on how they're sharpening your communication skills or helping you see new perspectives. Gratitude shifts the narrative. It turns frustration into opportunity and conflict into a chance to evolve. Now, take a moment to reflect. Think of one relationship, past or present, that has helped you grow in a meaningful way. What did you learn from it? How did it shape you? By acknowledging the value of that connection, you're not just practicing gratitude, you're honoring the role others play in your journey. And that, in itself, is a powerful act of growth. As we come to the close of this journey through the 40 Stoic lessons, it's clear how deeply these timeless principles can reshape the way we approach relationships. From learning to accept what we cannot control to cultivating empathy and practicing gratitude, each lesson offers a practical path to stronger, more meaningful connections. Stoicism teaches us that the foundation of any healthy relationship begins with self-awareness and self-improvement. When we focus on becoming better versions of ourselves, we naturally create space for healthier, more fulfilling interactions with others. Seneca once wrote, "He who improves himself improves all around him." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that the work we do on ourselves ripples outward, touching every relationship we hold dear. Whether it's learning to respond with patience instead of reacting in anger, or choosing to see challenges as opportunities for growth, these lessons aren't just about transforming others, they're about transforming us. Take a moment to reflect on which of these lessons resonated most with you. Was it the power of forgiveness, the importance of setting boundaries, or maybe it was the reminder to focus on what truly matters in life? Whatever it was, consider how you can bring these principles into your daily life. Relationships are a mirror. They reflect who we are and who we're becoming. By embracing these Stoic teachings, we can create relationships that are not only stronger but more authentic and deeply fulfilling. If this exploration of Stoicism has sparked something in you, let's keep the conversation going. Share in the comments which lesson stood out to you and how you plan to apply it. And if you're hungry for more wisdom like this, don't forget to subscribe and join this growing community of fellow Stoic learners. Together, we can continue this journey of growth, one lesson at a time.